my name is Ingram Lee, and I will be talking about how Dosan Ahn Chang has created an impact on Korean American history by creating the first ever Koreans who were immigrating to America, which was called Pachapa Camp. And before the creation of Pachapa Camp, when Koreans first immigrated to America, I think Koreans lived in certain parts of the United States. So, like when Koreans would immigrate from the U.S. from Korea, they would immigrate to certain places of the United States, but mostly I think most immigrate to San Francisco or to Riverside. And Dosan and his wife Ellen, Helen An immigrated to San Francisco. So I think I want to give a little backstory of Dosan Ahn Chang before how he created Pachapa Camp. So before he wanted to improve on Korea after seeing the aftermath of the first Sino-Japanese War, he had this motivation where he wanted to, improve on Korea and make Korea become a independent country. So An decided to move to Seoul to pursue an education at a Presbyterian school, and he studied for 3 years and later joined the Independence Club in 1897 and became leader in the Pyongyang branch of the Independence Club, where he would provide speeches to many people about why Korea should become an independent country, and he was a significant figure in the independence movement. So when he and his wife immigrated to San Francisco, it was in 1902, and they noticed that many Korean immigrants were having a hard time finding work, finding employment, especially because of a Japanese monopoly on labor contracts, where like immigrants had to follow certain rules when finding work in America. So it was a little harder for immigrants to find work in America because a lot of the people who are living in America were not so keen on having immigrants work because some were considered aliens because of different racial ethnicities. So when Tosan saw the number of Korean immigrants having a hard time living in America, one day he and his wife decided to move to Riverside. That he was encouraged from his two friends to work on the citrus farms. So in 1904, he founded Pachapa Camp along with Cornelius Early Ramsey, who is the owner of Alta Crested Graves, who offered employment to Dosan and other Korean immigrants who were near the area of Riverside. And along with that, it came with a $1,500 loan to lease housing to be able to live there, as well as an office space to build a Korean employment agency for those who aren't able to find employment, which was called the Korean Employment Bureau, to help those who aren't able to find a job. And after the creation of Pachapa Camp, the population of Korean immigrants started to increase because many of them were able to find a job and they were able to be transported to Riverside, which was where Pachapa Camp was, and they could be able to find a job there as well. And as it started to expand, the camp was focused on the community more than anything else. Like it was about community and opportunity to find jobs that Korean immigrants could do without dealing with a lot of discrimination. Because I think, like any other ethnicities, like racial, like any other race, like African American or Japanese American, Japanese, yeah. But you know what I'm saying. So other than that, I think they were still dealing with discrimination because many white Americans would consider them as aliens. So it was probably difficult for a lot of people, for immigrants to find work. So the Korean men would work on farms. Some would work in shops, hospitals, while the women would focus on maintaining their home, maintaining the family, maintaining homes, cleaning the homes, and cooking for the community, and taking care of children. In addition to farms, the language schools, community centers, and a Presbyterian church was added, courtesy of Dosan Ahn Chang, where he studied at a Presbyterian school. And one of the things that occurred when Pachapa Camp was active was the 공립협회, Hyopil, which was the cooperative association to develop democratic parties and institutions for the future funding of domestic and independent Korean nations to help build Korean influence, help Korea become an independent country, because at that time it was ruled under Japan. And then came the Hemet Valley incident, where when Korean immigrants were working with the apricots near the city of Hemet, there were white workers who threatened the Korean workers regarding the incident. So at that time, anti-Asian, anti-Japanese hate was still, sentiment was still high and still controversial at that time, considering not immigrants were just entering America, so not all of them were entering. There were certain immigrants from certain parts of the country all coming to America. So at that time, it wasn't really easy for immigrants to get used to to a new environment. So after the incident in Hemet Valley, the Japanese Association of Southern California urged the General of San Francisco to consider treating the Koreans as Japanese people, because obviously Koreans were under the occupation of the Japanese people, of Japan. So the U.S. government would end its relations with the Japanese government, kind of regarding over Korean immigrants. So now when Korean immigrants enter America, they were treated as political refugees rather than aliens. So in January 1913, California witnessed a great freeze that caused the citrus crops to become decimated, which led to a decrease in citrus crops, because at that time, at the chocolate camp, their main crops was citruses. So when citruses started to freeze, there were a lot of citrus crops that became drastically decreasing in amount, in terms of amount, in terms of numbers. There was not a lot of citrus crops anymore at that time, as well as a lot of job opportunities started to decrease. A lot of people left their jobs to find different jobs, because at the time, I think, after the Great Freeze, it affected a lot of workers, mostly Korean workers, because at that time, because they were working on citrus crops, they couldn't work at farm. A lot of them couldn't work at farms anymore, because the crops were decimated. They had to find other jobs that are a lot more difficult to adapt to. And Patapa Camp lasted until 1918, which was 5 years after the Great Freeze. And that's pretty much the story of Patapa Camp, but also some contributions regarding Dosan Ahn Chang was when Dosan was in Korea to settle the anti-Japanese sentiment. He wanted to help the Japanese hate that was affecting Korea, and at those times he was arrested numerous times. But the one that really affected me the most personally, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about Dosan Ahn Chang was the connection of the bombing of Yongbyon in China, where he was arrested with. I looked over some resources. I never found proof. I never found evidence that he was actually responsible for the bombing of Yongbyon. Apparently he was involved in it, but there was no evidence. There was no proof of how he was involved and why he was involved in the first place. And he was mostly tortured. He was punished for those actions, and I just felt bad because he was trying to help his country. He spoke up. He had confidence, and that confidence apparently got him in prison numerous times. And at that time, even though he was a prominent figure, at the same time he was a controversial figure at that time. So, but after all those years, he was able to get Korea in independence rule now. So no longer Korea was ruled under Japan. It became an independent nation. And when Dosan passed away in 1938, he created a legacy for that many people, especially many Korean Americans, could look up to, and how much he contributed to Korea to be a free country rather than being ruled by a different country. And his four main principles were to always seek the truth, act upon the truth, be loyal and trustworthy, and have the courage to uphold the truth. His leadership and patriotism, courage, and confidence was pretty much impeccable, because he was able to do what not many activists could do for a country to become independent. And that's what Dosan did